happening, nation? It's Joe Coom. We're back tonight. We're taking a look at our home opener. We're going to be looking at that New Orleans Saints game. I asked my brother to come back on the show because he is a diehard Saints fan and knows this team like the back of his hand. He already told me he's probably going to upset a few of you guys tonight, but we're going to take a realistic view of this because I truly think that we match up against the Chiefs better than we match up against the Saints. So let me know what you guys think. Feel free to jump in the comment section, but we're not going to waste too much time. Mike, welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
Going good. It's good to be back. I'm excited. I've been watching your shows, and I really enjoy them. So I saw the one about the Chiefs, and I'm excited to talk about the Saints versus the Raiders here.
Well, one of the big things that stood out to me right off the bat was Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders out there. The fact you guys went out there and picked him up was a huge addition for you guys. That is a very, very good combo. It forced me to change the Raiders' defense a little bit. You guys let me know what you think about that, because I did tweak this for the Chiefs video, because I went back and forth with some of you guys. Putting Arnett in that slot position and then putting Isaiah Johnson on that outside, I really like the way this looks. Let me know what you guys think about that. Robert, what's happening? Stumbling, what's going on? Supreme, welcome to the show, you guys. So, what do you think? Because in my opinion, it seems like we're going to need safety help on both sides, no matter who's out on the field for us. So, can we slow you guys down out there, do you think?
I agree with you with what you said. You all do match up better with the Chiefs offense than you do the Saints offense. And that's probably a good thing because you want to win your division. But I think it's a bad matchup in most areas for the Raiders defense versus the Saints offense. They're just too stacked. Thomas is pretty much going to eat no matter what corner is opposite of him. And now having a guy like Sanders on the opposite side that kind of forces defenses to respect him too. They're going to go after the corners. They're going to make the Raiders corners prove that they can slow down Thomas. And if they do, then they're going to have to slow down Thomas and Sanders. And the Saints will make them prove it.
I will say that. All right, I'll give you that one because it's hard to argue it, especially with how young our corners are. You got Drew Brees, you got Thomas, you got Sanders. That's a tough matchup. Even with Abrams sliding to one side and Randall sliding to the other, it still leaves the middle of the field wide open. And I mean, everybody talks about him. I want to talk about Taysom Hill for a minute. Mark, what's happening, dude? Welcome to the show. Darnell, what's going on? 805, what's happening, man? Taysom Hill, a lot of people compare him. That's the reason I want to talk about him, because a lot of people compare him to Bowden coming into our team. How do you think Hill's going to match up in this game? Because our slot spot, I'm telling you, with Arnett in there, it looks good. But even with Joyner in there, or you bring Amik Robertson in, who's another rookie, what can Taysom Hill really go do for you guys to kind of be a difference maker in this particular matchup?
It's going to sound crazy, but if you watch the Saints, you'll know that this is true. That you can't really put a guy like Robertson or Arnett or any one defender for the Raiders and say, how does he match up against Taysom Hill? Because the Saints will move Taysom Hill literally all over their formation. He'll play slot receiver, he'll play out wide, he'll play halfback, he'll line up at fullback, as well as tight end and quarterback. So you don't know when he's in the huddle. It makes it a very difficult matchup for defensive coordinators to know what type of personnel to send on the field. If you send in a heavy set because you're afraid Hill's going to, stay in and block, then they'll go over the top and end up putting him out wide. So, I mean, he's a amazing athlete, and he's really shined in every area that the Saints have had him kind of fill for them depending on the matchup. So, I mean, he's a tough matchup no matter what. If anybody out there watched the Vikings playoff loss that the Saints had last year, for the second half of that game, I mean, really for the whole game, Taysom Hill was the best offensive player on either side of the ball. I mean, he's super dynamic, and that's a crazy tough matchup for the Raiders or really anybody else. I mean, Hill is he's such a dynamic player that I'm a huge fan, and he creates mismatches all over the formation. If you pay too much attention to him, then one of the other guys are going to pop free, and that's what the Saints offense is all about, is just creating mismatches and then exploiting them.
Now, if Taysom Hill was not in there, who is that third wide receiver on your team? Because I know Taysom Hill is not an every down player.
Hill, as the season went on last year, Hill became more and more of an every down player because of the versatility and the unpredictability he brings to the huddle when he's on the field. So he's going to be heavily, heavily involved. Outside of Taysom Hill, they'll use Traquan Smith some in the slot, as well as bringing in, an extra heavy-set tight end, Josh Hill, or the rookie that they just drafted. They'll bring him in and then move Jared Cook out into the slot and use him more as a big wide receiver type. So what they're really about is looking at what the personnel, the defense puts on the field, and then moving guys around and trying to create mismatches, and then let Breeze find those and exploit them.
If he has the time. But we will get to that in a second. Ferris, what's happening, dude? Robert, what's he talking about, the middle of the field? I think Littleton would match up with anybody entering the middle of the field. I will get to Littleton here in a second. Hurst and Collins have to have a big game. The Saints' weakness is the interior O-line. I did see that. I was looking straight at that rookie out there. You got Collins straight across from him, and you got Pete on your other side. That's tough right there. I know McCoy's a decent center for you guys, but our defensive line right now is looking incredibly strong. We have a very strong rotation. If we can get pressure on Breeze for the majority of this game, I think that would be a huge factor for us to not give him the time to sit there and pick us apart like he loves to do to teams.
Hey, that's not just a huge factor. That's the factor. Because if that doesn't happen, it's going to be bad news. That's the Raiders' shot, and one of the guys that commented and what you had said, if you can, teams have proven that if you can provide consistent interior pressure on Breeze, that's like his kryptonite. So, Collins, I will say Collins makes me a little bit nervous if he gets hot and he gets, matched up against the inconsistent, crappy version of Andrus Pete. He could eat all day. He could have a big day. But really, you have it on your feet on the screen there. The Saints have pretty much said that they're going to move Eric McCoy, who was their starting center last year, over into that right guard slot because of his versatility and being able to do that. And he'll still make the line calls from the right guard spot until Ruiz, who's going to take over at center, is ready to do that. And they expect Ruiz to be able to do that, earlier rather than later.
So he's actually going to end up being your center by mid-season?
No, I would bet money that Ruiz starts the season as the starting center. I mean, he's a mauler. I talked about him when I came on during the pre-draft show, and I had mentioned Ruiz as probably the best interior offensive lineman in the entire draft. And he can play guard or center, but the Saints have pretty much come out and said in some interviews that their plan is to put Ruiz at center and McCoy at right guard. So really, it all depends on which version of Andrus Pete shows up week 2. Because if he shows up and he's ready to play, he's a very good guard and he's a mauler in the run game. If not, that's going to be an issue, and that's going to be an area where the Raiders can really make some noise. Because I don't see him doing it on the edges. Saints tackles are too good. And as good as the young Oakland defensive ends are, that's not going to be their matchup to try to go after.
Would you say, because I love the matchup of Littleton on Cooks in this game. I think that Littleton, at his point right now and where Cook is at right now in his career, I think he'll be able to pretty much shut him down the majority of this game. I know he's a big red zone threat, but the impact of Littleton on this defense against these tight ends is one of the big things I love, especially if Abram is going to have to be helping Mullen on one side, and Randall's going to have to cheat, if nothing else, over to that side to help Sanders. Then you have Kwiatkowski right up the gut. I see him blitzing a pretty good bit, trying to come right up the middle, following behind Collins and Hurst or Collins and Hankins, and really just trying to get that pressure onto Breeze. The only thing that worries me about that is Kamara, because you have to account for him.
That's not a terrible strategy to at least try out and see if it works. I mean, the Vikings did a lot of that too in the playoff game with success. But talking about Littleton, I will say that the last few matchups the Saints had with the Rams, and they had played, a bunch over the last 2 years. Littleton typically does a really nice job of covering and marking Alvin Kamara. So I would look more at Littleton versus Kamara, and the fact that Littleton has shown that he can do a good job of containing and neutralizing Kamara in the pass game and in the run. I mean, he pretty much shadowed him when the Rams played the Saints. So I would say that's a pretty good matchup. And I love Kamara. He's great. He's a great, super good dynamic running back. But Littleton is that good. So, I mean, he should be able to kind of really neutralize Kamara in the passing game. But then you're looking more at an issue of Cook versus Randall or Abram if he's still out there. I mean, the injury to Abram was big. I mean, you can't have a guy who relies on being a box safety run support guy, and then in the first game of his career, his shoulder blows up. That's not a good sign. I mean, I'm hoping that he comes back because I'm a fan of him, and I loved him at Mississippi State and stuff coming out. I love his play style, but hopefully he can make it back from that injury, and it'll be more of an issue with Abram and Randall and maybe the slot guy worrying about Cook versus Littleton. Even Kwiatkowski could end up, getting marked up on Cook because they're going to want to have Littleton on Kamara.
I wouldn't mind seeing Randall on Cook, but I would not want to see Randall slide over and try to go one-on-one against Hill or your third out there. That one kind of scares me when he starts sliding into that slot position. Let me hit a few of these real quick. We match up well. Our linebackers can cover, and we deep and talented at the cornerback, plus our front four can and will apply pressure. I really think our front four is going to be the factor of this game, and I think it's going to be Collins, Hurst, and Hankins, and even P.J. Hall getting in there and just having a rotation of fresh legs to keep pounding the middle of that offensive line out there. I thought Isaiah Johnson would be put in the slot corner position, and Arnett would be at cornerback 2. Fierce, we can take a look at that real quick and slide him over. I was going back and forth with it. I had these dudes lined up, and I kept shuffling them around out there, and I like Johnson a little bit more just because he's more physical on that inside spot, especially against this team, just to get out there and really just make some hard hits. But either way, on that right-hand side, I really like the way that it looks with those two on the field at the same time. It was tough kind of pulling Joyner out because I am expecting him to take a step forward. Just real quick, how do you feel about Joyner? Because the nation's kind of down on him right now. I'm really hoping he turns the page and kind of gets back to his playing level where he was at before he came to the Raiders. You think he has that in him still?
I think Joyner is what he is at this point. He's not what he used to be by any means. But at this point in his career, he's a guy that I think you look at more as veteran depth that you could play in a pinch and hope that, and not have to worry about a rookie going out there and making mistakes. I wouldn't put any more of that. I wouldn't put any more confidence than that in Joyner at this point. Solid veteran depth that if something goes wrong with the starters ahead of him, or if they just completely fall flat, then he can come in and be serviceable and flash a few plays a season, but really nothing more than that. When he's on the field during this matchup, he is going to have Breeze looking his way, and he's going to have Sean Payton running plays to try to exploit the things that have fallen off for Joyner recently.
Alejandro, welcome to the show. Love your videos. Raiders go 14-2. Me and you are on the same page. Robert, first of all, I think Gruden will slow down the Saints with our offense. Running the football with Josh Jacobs will prove to be time-consuming and keeping Breeze off the field and on the sidelines. I think that'll also be a major part of that. We're going to have to win the time of possession game, and I really think, if we can get the run game established, I really think we'll be able to do it. We'll jump into more into that when I set up when I flip the script on this and take a look at the other side. Chiefs Kingdom, what's up, dude? Welcome to the show. Does Mariota ever play? I don't see Mariota playing unless Carr gets hurt or unless Carr falls flat on his face. Do you agree with that?
About what?
Mariota coming in here and getting a starting job over Carr?
No, not unless there's an injury or the Raiders are ending up in a situation where they're like 1-5 and the season is kind of on its last legs, looking for some kind of inspiration. Other than that, he may have a couple of packages where they try to bring him in, but now that they got that Lynn Bowden, I see them using Bowden more as the Swiss Army knife, dual threat quarterback role, even more so than Mariota. Let me comment real quick though on the poster that was saying about controlling the clock with Brandon Jacobs, and I know we'll talk more about it, but you have to understand how good the Saints' run defense is, and that's a staple over the last 4 or 5 years. The Saints haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher versus their defense in something like 43 straight games, including the playoffs. I mean, you have to go back to 2017 in Week 11 versus the Redskins, and Samaje Perine rushed for like 106 yards. And since then, no single running back has gone for over 100 yards. So that's a tall order to ask Jacobs to go out there and be the guy to do that. And the defense for the Saints, and like you said, we'll talk more about it, they are very, very stout at shutting down the run. So you're going to have to score points to have a chance in that game.
Let's see. Mark said the Saints tackles are tough. Armstead shut down Mack when they last played. That is true. Their tackles are very, very good. Was it Ramczyk? Was he the one that shut out Watts? JJ?
Yeah, Ramczyk put a blank stat sheet up for JJ Watt last season, and that was when Watt was healthy game 1. So their tackles are arguably the best tackle tandem in the entire league. I'm not in the least bit worried about our tackles versus the Raiders' defensive ends. Your advantage, if you have one, or your chance on the interior of the offensive line, is if you can get Pete on a bad day. I have no worries about Ruiz or McCoy. They'll work as a unit and cover each other. So it's all about Pete.
Well, welcome to the show, dude. I'm glad you were able to make it to the live stream. I think the key will be between the D-line and the offensive line. Going to be a challenge for our young D-line, and it will. But I know your tackles are tough, but I do think we can get that interior pressure, and I think you'll see Farrell probably move into that interior spot a little bit throughout this game just to get some extra pressure in there because if Pete's having a bad day and Farrell comes to the inside with his extra 13 pounds of muscle, he's gonna go out there and feed the entire day. England in my city, he said, LOL, Hill at wide receiver. We were just kind of showing his different positions, and like Mike was saying earlier, by the end of last season, he had kind of slid into that role to where he was just playing every down, either lining up in the backfield then motioning out, or just lining up in that slot.
I'll tell you, I mean, I laugh out loud at Hill at receiver too, because it's so crazy that he's talented enough to have never really played wide receiver since he was like a little kid, and to be able to do it at a high level in the NFL with like almost no practice. It's crazy funny. But the reality is, I mean, Hill was a good wide receiver for them. He caught a touchdown in the playoff game as a wide receiver. So I mean, he's making plays out of that position, and he's got the speed to take the top off of just about any defense as well. So I mean, Hill is legit. He had more touchdown catches last year than a lot of big name guys, including like Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and he tied for the same amount of touchdown passes caught last year as the Raiders' top receiver catching touchdowns. So I mean, Hill is a legit threat as a pass catcher, whether it's receiver, tight end, whatever.
Barry, welcome to the show, man. The Raiders have to find a pass rush in the Saints game. Yes, dude, that is like the key for our defensive side of the ball out there. If we cannot get pressure on Drew Brees, especially now that they have Sanders, he will sit back there and he will carve us just to shreds. Because any quarterback that has that much time is going to go out there and do it. And if it's a guy like Brees, he's going to do it 10 times better than the average dude out there in the NFL.
You got to shut down the run, too. You got to be able to shut down the run. Because if the Saints learn and they see that they can run the ball, then they'll shift the focus of their offense over to just pounding the ball. I mean, I've seen them do it for years, so they're going to check and see, and if you're not stopping the run, they're going to start running the ball until you stop it. So that's important too.
It is. We are very good against the run. We were very good against the run last season. Not much has changed with that, except the addition of bringing in Marinelli, and he's all stopped the run on the way to the quarterback. And I think that's going to be, that's the difference maker out there. Because I really think the rest, I mean, your receivers are going to be tough. I think our linebackers match up with the interior guys, but Abrams gonna have to play big, and we're gonna have to get somebody out there getting consistent pressure out there. Hopefully, it's Mad Max. I could really see Mad Max showing up in a big game like this. It's our home opener, man. This team is gonna be jacked out of their minds.
If they pretty much play Crosby where he attacks the right side of the offensive line, man, that's a tall order. I'm talking about like the studs of the NFL have done nothing against Ryan Ramczyk. He is a beast. So I like it, but Crosby, I just there's no way, dude. If he does, then he's arrived.
Would it be better to line up Crosby across from Armstead and let him just attack from that side in the majority of the game?
Honestly, dude, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're gonna get pressure. You're gonna have to get pressure in the interior of the D line. And you're going to have to create confusion through middle blitzes and try to create that pressure up the gut. Even if your ends can get around the edge, Breeze is a master of stepping up in the pocket, buying an extra 2 seconds, and finding the open man. The key to your defense in this game will be interior pressure on a consistent basis and stopping the run.
Mark, you're right, dude. Marinelli is an old school coach. He will find ways to open up holes and get through and get pressure out there. Don't sell our offensive line short. We are opening holes for Josh Jacobs, and how well the Saints defensive line holds up against our offense. I will give you that, dude. We have a straight up solid, probably top 3 to 4 offensive line out there, and they move people. They move people a tremendous amount. I think you might see another 100-yard rusher in that second game.
Hey, I mean, it's possible, but you just said you guys got a top 2 to 3 offensive line. Well, guess what one of the teams that's in that 2 or 3 or 2 or 1 above you in the rankings is, because you're looking at it matched up against your defense right here on the screen.
With Pete Ruiz and McCoy out there, I don't know. I think we'll be able to feed.
If any of those guys aren't ready, the Saints have guys that they can plug in. Nick Easton could plug in at any one of those interior offensive line spots and be a very solid starter, and he showed that last year when Pete was hurt and Warford was hurt. Easton would start for a lot of teams in the league, and he's just sitting there waiting in case they need him. I mean, trust me, that the offensive line is one of the best in the league. If it has a chink in the armor, it's Andrus Peat, number 75, sitting there. If he shows up with his head up in the clouds and looking like an idiot, which happens all too regularly, I'm afraid to say, that could be an issue. But, that's the way that it went in the playoff game versus Minnesota last year. And I keep bringing that up because that was a good example of how to beat the Saints, because that's what happened. Well, Warford was there, and he had fallen apart too. But they were getting interior pressure. They were wrecking a lot of the Saints' timing and play action stuff and quick passes with that interior pressure. And even in doing all of that, it took, Rudolph pushing off in overtime for them to sneak away with the win. So, I mean, they played just about a perfect defensive game and executed the perfect game plan against that offense. And they still had to go to overtime to get away with the win, because the Saints offense is still going to find a way.
There was another team that almost had to go to overtime, but we went ahead and just got the 2-point conversion and walked off the field victorious against the old Saints. That was us. It was beautiful.
That's a different team.
Oh, we could run against anyone. Richard, you are right, sir. I completely agree with you. If our offensive line, I'm hoping, is healthy and stays healthy for the majority of next season, we will be able to move some bodies, and Jacobs will go out there and have a good day. We're gonna have to put some pressure in the middle, part of the rookie. That's what. Yes, we have broke that down. Diego, what's happening, man? Welcome to the show. Mo and Collins are going to create havoc. Yeah, I'm telling you, dude. And if you get the rotation, you get Hankins in there, and really, even PJ Hall, I think, could be a major factor in this game. And maybe even a guy like Arden Key could show up and kind of prove himself that he's back and ready to go. I would love to see Arden Key come out there and play a huge game in our home opener out there. So yeah, that's pretty much what I had for you guys tonight. What do you think right here? Your score prediction before we break it down, go in the other direction. How many points you think you guys will put up against this defense?
I would say that I see the Saints putting up 35 plus points. If I had to put a number on it right now, I'd say it's going to take the Raiders scoring more, 38 points or more, to get out of there with a game, with a victory.
That's a tough one.
Or to make it to overtime.
I truly think this defense at our home opener is going to come up so jacked up. It's not going to matter who we play against. I think this is a definite win for our team. I know a lot of people argue with me about that, but I will tell you right now that it's just, if we have our fan base there and there's fans in the stands, it's going to be what makes the difference in this game. Because if the nation it comes true in our home opener in Vegas, we're gonna beat you guys badly, like badly. I'm calling it right now, like right now. But that's pretty much it, guys. I'm Son Joku. Thank you guys all very much that came out tonight in the comment section and helped carry the show along. You know, I always appreciate that. Mike, thank you very much for coming on. I wanted to get a Saints fan perspective of it and see what you guys think about it. So, until next time, guys, I'm Son Joku. I do appreciate y'all. We'll see you guys later.